Live from New Delhi, watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Russia-US talks on Ukraine peace plan yield no breakthrough. Kremlin says no compromise reached on territory. Trump calls Ukraine conflict a mess. Dissent among US lawmakers as military continue to surge assets to the Caribbean. Lawmakers threaten vote on war powers. Trump warns US drug trafficking countries could face attack. Indian Navy will showcase its operational might across all domains as the force begins celebrations in Thiruvananthapuram ahead of the Navy Day. President Draupadi Murmu to grace the occasion. An India series win as they take on South Africa in the second one-day international in Raipur today. Kremlin described the Ukraine peace talks as constructive but said no compromise had been reached on territorial questions. The comments came after talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner held nearly for 5 hours in Moscow.
So pleased to see you.
5 hours of talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US negotiators, including Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, failed to produce a breakthrough on securing Ukraine peace deal. Kremlin spokesperson said, though the meeting was constructive, but parts of the plan remained unacceptable to Russia.
The conversation was very useful, constructive and very meaningful. It lasted not for 5 minutes but for 5 hours. Naturally, we discussed with US colleagues the content of those drafts, those documents which the Americans submitted to Moscow some time ago. We went through these documents. We did not discuss any specific formulas, any specific American proposals. We could agree with certain things and the President confirmed this to his interlocutors. We criticized some things and the President did not hide a critical, even negative attitude to a number of proposals.
Just before the meeting, Putin said changes proposed by Kyiv and Europe to a US-backed draft peace plan were unacceptable. He said Russia did not want a war with European powers but was ready to fight if Europe did want a direct conflict with Moscow.
We are not planning to fight Europe. I've said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. The question is, if Europe starts a war with us, I believe that very quickly. This is not Ukraine. With Ukraine, we act in a surgical, careful way. You understand, right? It is not war in the full modern sense of the word. If Europe chooses to start a war, the situation can very quickly reach a point where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with.
While Tuesday's talks were underway, Trump told his cabinet in Washington that the conflict had not been easy to resolve, describing it as a mess.
As you know, we have a problem with a war that our people are trying to settle now with Russia and Ukraine, but we're trying to get that settled. I've settled 8 wars. This would be the 9th, and our people are over in Russia right now to see if we can get it settled. Not an easy situation, let me tell you. What a mess. It's a war that never would have happened if I were president. Not even a chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years.
Ukrainian president thanked Ireland for its support during a visit to Dublin on Tuesday, telling lawmakers that unity among Ukraine's partners had become a main weapon in conflict. Ukrainian representatives have held 2 rounds of high-level talks on the draft plan in recent weeks, which have been attended by Witkoff, Kushner, and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Bureau Report, DD India.
And dissent is growing in Washington as US lawmakers clash over President Donald Trump's escalating military activity in the Caribbean and pressure on Venezuela. Senators and representatives from both parties are now threatening to invoke Congress's war powers if the administration moves forward with a strike inside the country. As a report by DD India's Harshita Oberoi.
For months, US lawmakers have voiced concerns over what they call an unchecked campaign against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. On Tuesday, Senators Tim Kaine, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, and Rand Paul warned that unauthorized military action would be a dangerous and unacceptable step. A similar resolution in the House aims to block hostilities without congressional consent. Concerns have intensified following at least 20 US strikes on suspected drug smuggling boats since September, which have killed more than 80 people, and reports that a second strike targeting survivors may violate international law. Meanwhile, US Navy vessels and military jets were seen on Tuesday near Ponce, Puerto Rico. The show of force comes as the US maintains pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, whose chances of a safe US-mediated exit appear increasingly slim. After a recent call in which Trump dismissed most of Maduro's demands, the president declared Venezuela's airspace closed in its entirety, with Puerto Rico serving as a forward base for operations tied to the crisis. US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth noted that strikes have been temporarily paused because drug smuggling vessels have become harder to locate, but emphasized that operations against traffickers will resume.
And I will just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations, and we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that.
US President Donald Trump warned that any country trafficking illegal drugs into the US citing cocaine from Colombia is subject to attack, underlining his hard-line approach to narcotics.
Anybody that's doing that and selling it into our country is subject to attack.
Amid this escalating tension, Pope Leo, the first US-born pope, cautioned against military intervention, advocating dialogue and economic pressure instead. Harshita Oberoi for DD India.
A NATO foreign ministers meet will be held in Brussels on Wednesday for talks dominated by the future of Ukraine and unease among allies over a US-backed peace plan. The meeting, one of only two formal ministerials on NATO's annual calendar, was expected to showcase unity as allies review progress since the Hague summit and begin preparing for 2026 summit in Ankara. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio will skip the key meeting with deputy attending in his place. Much of Wednesday's closed-door debate is expected to center on the peace plan which European and Ukrainian officials have spent the past 2 weeks rewriting. European leaders insist that only Ukraine can decide on its own territories, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says security guarantees and preserving sovereignty are top priorities. Now, European Union negotiators say they have reached a deal to phase out Russian gas imports by 2027, aiming to end the bloc's reliance on Moscow for energy. The European Council announced on Wednesday that it has struck an agreement with the European Parliament to cut Russian gas imports in stages over the next 3 years. The plan includes a binding prohibition on imports of liquefied natural gas from end of 2026, followed by a full stop to pipeline gas purchases by autumn 2027. The move follows a sharp decline in Russian gas deliveries since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, dropping to 12% of EU imports compared with 45% before the conflict. Hungary, France and Belgium remain among the member states still receiving Russian gas. And Malaysia's Transport Ministry announced that the search for missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 will restart on December 30th, more than 10 years after the aircraft vanished en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. The Boeing 777 carrying 239 people disappeared in 2014, and previous search efforts have failed to locate it. Ocean Infinity will resume a 55-day intermittent seabed search in a high-probability area of the southern Indian Ocean, though the exact location was not disclosed. Malaysia will pay the company $70 million only if significant wreckage is found. A 2018 report suggested the plane was likely steered off course intentionally but gave no conclusion. Families of victims from multiple countries continue to seek compensation from involved companies. Now, US President Donald Trump and Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva discussed trade, economy and fighting organized crime in a phone call. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump said the two men also discussed sanctions and apparent reference to his administration's targeting of Brazil's judiciary over the criminal case of right-wing former President Jair Bolsonaro. In a social media post, Trump said he looked forward to seeing and speaking with Lula soon. Brazil's presidential palace said in a statement that Lula thanked Trump for his decision to remove additional tariffs on US imports of Brazilian goods and added that Brazil seeks to progress on talks about products still affected by the levies. In a 40-minute call, Lula stressed on the urgency of strengthening cooperation with the United States to fight international organized crime. And US President Trump launched a tirade against Somali immigrants and their political representatives during a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, calling Somalians garbage who contribute nothing. Trump attacked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and derided Somalia as a place where people just run around killing each other and whose country stinks.
No, I think that Waltz is a grossly incompetent man. There's something wrong with him, okay? There's something wrong with him. And when you look at what he's done with Somalia, which is barely a country, you know, they have no anything. They just run around killing each other. There's no structure. And when I see somebody like Ilhan Omar, who I don't know at all, but I always watch her for years. I've watched her complain about our Constitution, how she's being treated badly. Our Constitution, the United States of America, is a bad place. Hates everybody, hates Jewish people, hates everybody. And I think she's an incompetent person.
The U.S. Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem has urged an expansion of the list of countries covered by a travel ban, saying they were flooding the United States with killers and leeches. Noem's post on X comes amid media reports that President Donald Trump is considering expanding the number of nations subject to U.S. travel restrictions to 30 from the current 19. Noem said she is recommending a full travel ban on every country that's been flooding our nation with killers, leeches and entitlement junkies. 19 countries have been subject to U.S. travel restrictions since June. Now, Haiti is taking a major step towards restoring democracy, announcing plans to hold its first national elections in nearly a decade. Haiti's transitional authorities have set August 2026 for the country's first elections in nearly a decade, but officials warn the vote can only happen if security improves. Haiti hasn't voted since 2016 and 2021 assassination of President Jovenel Moise deepened its political crisis. Leaders say the new decree offers a path back to stability as the UN reports more than 16,000 people killed in gang violence since 2022. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India Live. The death toll in the aftermath of Cyclone Dwa rises sharply. Advocate Madhav Khurana has been appointed by the Union Home Ministry as the special public prosecutor for conducting trial and other matters in Delhi car blast case. And CEC Ganesh Kumar interacts with Indian community in Sweden before assuming chairpersonship of International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance today. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Updates on Cyclone Dwa from Sri Lanka now. The death toll in the aftermath of Cyclone Dwa has risen sharply, with the Disaster Management Centre confirming 474 deaths and 356 people missing after days of severe flooding and landslides. Kandy district remains the worst affected, recording 118 fatalities. Sri Lanka's government has issued a special gazette declaring 22 districts severely affected by Cyclone Dwa as national disaster areas. India has significantly expanded its humanitarian aid under Operation Sagar Bandhu, deploying air, sea and ground assets to support relief efforts. Supplies delivered to Tricomali by INS Sukanya were airlifted by Sri Lankan Air Force to isolated communities across the eastern province. Further, Indian rescue teams carried out large-scale evacuations with NDRF personnel in Puttalam, assisting nearly 800 stranded residents, including expectant mothers and the injured. Meanwhile, the Indian Air Force helicopters on Tuesday airdropped over 5.5 tons of relief, evacuated dozens from inaccessible terrain and transported critically injured survivors to medical centers. A C-17 Globemaster also arrived with a rapidly deployable modular field hospital, complete with ambulances, trauma care units and operation theatres, to Sri Lanka on Tuesday, along with 73 medical personnel. While the island is undertaking measures to get back to normalcy, the Public Health Inspectors Union of Sri Lanka has warned that there is a potential risk of an outbreak of infectious diseases in the coming days associated with floods and inundation in various parts of the island. Meanwhile, in view of the heavy rainfall warning caused by Cyclone Dwa, all schools in the Indian Union Territory of Puducherry will be closed on Wednesday. In view of the heavy rain forecast, the India Met Department called for a complete suspension of fishing operations over the southwest and adjoining West Central Bay of Bengal and off Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, South Coastal Andhra Pradesh, North Sri Lanka, the Gulf of Mannar and the Comorin area until morning. Earlier, the IMD issued a red alert for Tiruvallur, Chennai, Kanchipuram and Chengalpattu districts in Tamil Nadu on Tuesday as heavy rains triggered by Cyclone Dwa hit the state. Moving on, External Affairs Minister Dr. Ajay Shankar today highlighted how the contribution of Indians abroad is reshaping the country's economic engagement with the world. Speaking at the India's World Annual Conclave 2025, Dr. Jai Shankar said that in a globalized world, conversations around external engagement often focus heavily on trade while overlooking the massive impact of human mobility and overseas employment. He pointed out that India received a record $135 billion in remittances last year, nearly double the value of exports to the United States. His remarks highlight the growing recognition of India's global workforce as a critical pillar of its external economic engagement.
Last year, remittances to India were $135 billion. That's about roughly twice our exports to the United States. Now, it's just the remittances, because think of the people abroad, their own livelihood, the assets they have created there, the services which have been generated in India, the second, third order consequences of all this. And I leave it to you to actually imagine what is the size of this business which is called mobility.
And the Confederation of Indian Industry, or CII, on Wednesday unveiled India Edge 2025, a pivotal forum on labour reforms for Viksit Bharat, with Union Minister Mansukh Mandavia as a keynote speaker. Amid the recent implementation of 4 labour codes on the 21st of November, replacing 29 outdated laws, Minister Mandavia hailed the pro-worker, pro-growth measures for universal social security, gig worker protections and women's empowerment, accelerating India's 2047 developed nation vision.
हमें लेबर को राइट भी देना है, हमें उसका कल्याण भी करना है और इसलिए हमने कई ऐसे कदम उठाए दोस्तों। सिर्फ कानूनों का मर्जर ही नहीं बल्कि श्रम शक्ति के सम्मान का मिशन के रूप में हमने रिफॉर्म को लेके आए।
Updates on Delhi car blast case now. The Union Home Ministry on Tuesday appointed senior advocate Madhav Khurana as the special public prosecutor for conducting trial and other matters in the case related to the November 10 car blast near the Red Fort. As per the government orders, Khurana has been appointed special public prosecutor for 3 years on behalf of National Investigation Agency to conduct trial and other legal matters before the NIA Special Court and the Delhi High Court. 7 key accused have been arrested in the Red Fort blast case so far, while 73 witnesses, including those injured in the blast, have been examined by the NIA so far. Now, Shangamugam Beach in southern India's Thiruvananthapuram is all set to witness the grand celebrations of Indian Navy Day on Wednesday. President Draupadi Murmu will grace the Navy Day celebrations and witness the operational demonstration by the Indian Navy. Demonstrating Indian Navy's operational might, the celebration will feature a striking display of maritime power by warships, naval aircraft and submarine. High-speed maneuver by Hawks fighter jets, combat-free fall and slithering demonstration showcasing synergy of land-sea operations and firings by warships would be the key highlights of the event. The operational demonstration aims to bring forth the indomitable spirit and core strength of Indian Navy as combat-ready, cohesive, Atmanirbhar, safeguarding seas for a Viksit Samriddha Bharat. The demonstration will highlight the maritime excellence of state-of-the-art indigenous platforms proudly symbolizing Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, India's Chief Election Commissioner Gyanesh Kumar is set to take over as the President of the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, International IDEA, on Wednesday in Stockholm, Sweden. Earlier, the Chief Election Commissioner Gyanesh Kumar interacted with the Indian business community at the Embassy of India in Sweden. The Indian CEC will assume the chairmanship of the International IDEA later today. Gyanesh Kumar also met with Secretary General of International IDEA, Dr. Kevin Casas Zamora. He briefed the Indian CEC about the agenda for the 34th session of the Council of Member States to be held on Wednesday. And for the first time in its history of 30 years, the group of 37 democratic countries of the world have invited India to chair the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, International IDEA. This development is seen as a significant global recognition of the Election Commission of India and its workforce for consistently delivering independent, transparent and credible elections. Updates from Parliament now. India's Communications Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia on Wednesday addressed concerns over the Sanchar Sathi app in the lower house, asserting that the app cannot be used for snooping and will remain inactive unless a user chooses to register.
संचार साथी एक ऐसा ऐप है जिसके आधार पर जन भागीदारी के आधार पर आज देश की एक एक जनता और नागरिक अपने आप को सुरक्षित रख सकता है फ्रॉड से, स्टोलन मोबाइल से, अपने स्टोलन मोबाइल को रिकॉर्ड कर सकता है, रिपोर्ट कर सकता है। ये मैं अवश्य कहना चाहता हूं कि इस ऐप के आधार पर न स्नूपिंग संभव है, न स्नूपिंग होगा। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी की सरकार देश की जनता के हाथों में अधिकार देना चाहती है ताकि वे अपने आप को सुरक्षित रख पाए।
Sports updates now. We'll start with cricket. After clinching a thrilling 17-run victory in Ranchi, the KL Rahul-led Indian side now shifts focus to Raipur for the second one-day international against South Africa today. With the hosts eyeing a series-clinching win, the Proteas will be determined to bounce back and restore momentum in this three-match series.
After pipping South Africa by 17 runs in a thriller in Ranchi during the first ODI, India will look to seal the three-match ODI series when they take on the Proteas in the second ODI international in Raipur on Wednesday. Led by Virat Kohli's 52nd ODI turn, India posted 349 for 8 after being invited to bat first. Despite finding themselves in a commanding position, the hosts were pushed hard by South Africa's spirited lower order before eventually restricting the visitors to 332. After resting for the first ODI, South Africa regular skipper Temba Bavuma and Keshav Maharaj are expected to return for the crucial second game. The Ranchi fixture also marked the strong return of the famed Roko duo. While Kohli anchored the innings with a majestic turn, Rohit Sharma contributed a solid 57 runs. The match additionally set a new milestone. The pair have now featured in 392 international matches together, surpassing the long-standing record of Sachin Tendulkar and Rahul Dravid. Babuma feels facing an Indian side with Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma is nothing new, but it does bolster the host.
Look, the inclusion of those two guys, it does bolster their team. Like we said at the start of the series, you get two guys who have a wealth of experience and a wealth of skill, and that can only benefit the team. So I mean, it's not something that we're not aware of. We played against. I mean, I think Rohit played 2007, the T20 World Cup. I was still in school then. So I mean, these guys have been around. So there's nothing new. These are world-class players.
One of India's biggest positives has been the emergence of Harshit Rana. Bowling with lively pace and discipline, Rana claimed 3 wickets in Ranchi, including 2 early strikes that put the Proteas on the back foot. He has now shown that not only he can be effective in hitting the pitch hard with the old ball, but also with the new ball. South Africa, meanwhile, will look to tighten up on the areas that caused them in the first match. With a deep batting lineup and Babuma's return to leadership, they will aim to replicate the strong performance that saw them excel in the recent Test series and translate that momentum into the white ball format. Sports Desk, DD India.
Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.